I'm 80 years old, and for a long time I lived with a silent drum beating in my ears. I ignored it until the day my doctor's face went pale as he looked at the blood pressure cuff. He told me I was walking around with a silent killer and that my heart was pounding against walls that were ready to burst. That day I realized longevity isn't a gift. It's a series of intentional rescues. I had to learn to save my own life, and it didn't happen in a pharmacy. It happened in 3 daily choices. For nearly 40 years, I was a high school teacher. My life was governed by bells, loud hallways, and the constant, vibrant energy of thousands of students. I was the woman who always had an answer, the one who stayed late to grade every essay, the one who thought that being busy was the same thing as being healthy. I carried the weight of my students' futures and my own family's needs like a suit of armor. I thought that as long as I could outrun the exhaustion, I was fine. But high blood pressure is a patient enemy. It doesn't scream, it erodes. It quietly scars your arteries while you're busy worrying about everyone else. The first rescue I practiced was the stillness. I realized that for decades I was flooding my system with stress hormones the second I opened my eyes. I remember the 1980s, waking up at 5:30 a.m., my mind already racing with lesson plans and the mental inventory of the fridge. I would bolt out of bed, my heart already hammering, and gulp down black coffee as if it were medicine. I thought that adrenaline was what kept me young, but in reality, it was just wearing out the machinery. Now, before I touch my phone or turn on a light, I sit on the edge of my bed for 10 minutes. I take 10 deep, slow breaths. This isn't just relaxing, it's biological recalibration. When we are stressed, our arteries actually constrict, making the heart pump harder to force blood through smaller pipes. By sitting in that stillness, I am manually opening those pipes. It is a quiet signal that tells my nervous system the war is over. I look back at all those years I spent rushing, and I see how I taught my body that life was a series of emergencies. If you don't give your heart a peaceful start, you are asking it to run a marathon on a broken road. I make sure those breaths are diaphragmatic, breathing deep into the belly, not the chest. Each exhale is an intentional softening of the tension I've carried since the days I was balancing a career and raising children. I've found that if I skip this, my blood pressure remains elevated for the rest of the day. It's as if the body needs a formal permission slip to stay calm. The second rescue was the salt pact. This was the hardest change because I grew up in a time where convenience was the ultimate prize. I remember when frozen dinners and canned soups first became popular. It felt like a miracle for a working mother. I lived on those hidden salts for years. I thought a dash of salt here and there didn't matter, but I was wrong. Processed salt acts like a sponge in your blood, pulling in water and increasing the volume of fluid your heart has to move. It's like trying to pump thick mud through a straw. I had to stop buying anything that comes in a crinkly plastic bag or a box with a shelf life longer than mine. I moved back to the basics, things that grew in the dirt and die in a week. I replaced the salt shaker with lemon juice, fresh garlic, and rosemary. I discovered that my heavy feeling, the swollen ankles that used to make it hard to stand at the chalkboard all day, wasn't just old age. It was the debris of an industrial diet. I started spending more time in the produce aisle than anywhere else. I learned that potassium-rich foods, like spinach and bananas, actually help the body flush out the excess sodium that keeps pressure high. I treated my kitchen like a laboratory for my heart. I experimented with spices I'd never heard of, finding ways to make food sing without the chemical sting of sodium. Slowly, my taste buds changed. I realized that the flavor I had been chasing was just a mask for poor quality ingredients. Now the earthy scent of fresh herbs is more satisfying than any salty snack ever was. I think of my mother, who used to salt everything before she even tasted it. She passed away at 70 from a stroke. I realized I was following her footsteps, and I decided to take a different path. The third rescue is the after-meal drift. In my teaching days, lunch was 20 minutes of standing over a sink or a desk, inhaling a sandwich while checking emails or talking to a colleague about a difficult student. I never gave my body time to simply digest. I learned too late that the body needs movement to process the pressure of a meal. Now, no matter how tired I feel, I walk for 20 minutes after my largest meal. It's not a workout, it's a drift. I walk slow enough to notice the birds, but steady enough to keep the blood moving. This helps my muscles pull sugar from my blood and relaxes my arteries. At 80, I am more active than I was at 60 because I refuse to let my blood go stagnant. I remember how I used to collapse onto the sofa after a big Sunday dinner, feeling my heart thumping in my throat. I thought that was just a full stomach. It wasn't. It was a heart struggling to keep up. This walk does something else, too. It aids digestion in a way that prevents the heart from having to work overtime to support the stomach. I've noticed that on days I skip my walk, I feel a throbbing in my temples after dinner. But when I move, even just around the block, that pressure dissipates. I use that time to detach from the day's worries. I don't take my phone. I don't listen to the news. I just let my feet find a rhythm, and I let the horizon calm my mind. A moving body creates a moving mind, and a moving mind doesn't obsess over the things it cannot change. I think of the thousands of miles I walked in those school hallways, but those miles were filled with anxiety. These 20 minutes are filled with peace. I'm 80 now, and my blood pressure is a steady, quiet hum. I stopped waiting for a magic pill to fix what I had broken and started taking responsibility for the pressure I was putting on myself. If you feel that pulsing in your ears, don't wait. You are still here, and that means you are worth the effort of a few deep breaths and a short walk. The sun is up, and it's time for my stillness. It's a beautiful thing to feel your heart beat and know that it's finally at peace.